Hello and welcome to the magical world of the Pensieve. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, the book, has come out a bit over a week ago, and I've been itching to review it. I've read it twice since that time, though that's not really special. It's a script for a play, so I can read it at least as fast as I can see the play. And I think it's good to share my opinion on the first Harry Potter book for almost 10 years. Firstly, the most important thing to keep in mind about this book is that it is a script to a stage play. It is not a novel, and it shouldn't be taken as such. Second, I'll be doing just a small spoiler-free review before I move on to the real details. Without further ado, here's the quickie spoiler-free one. This story has some great character development for Harry, who's portrayed in ways that we've never seen before. Hogwarts is shown in a different light, and many of the characters grow in ways you wouldn't expect. Some of the best parts of the books are lingering concerns for the whole Voldemort situation, and I really enjoy how the world treats the cast as they struggle with the past and the present. It doesn't pull any punches with the characters when they become more gritty, which is entirely what a sequel to the series needs. On the other hand, the main plot points of the books are overdone to the extreme. This story relies too heavy-handedly on events of the past, not dealing with situations in the present. I don't just mean this with the paranoia over Voldemort. I just mean that it draws attention unnecessarily to past events that seemingly have no relevance to the plot, but are just used as pandering. The dialogue isn't written by Rowling, which is noticeable. It's still well written, but heavy pandering is still a huge issue on this front as well. Rules of the Harry Potter world are changed for this, and one of the characters feels like they act against their nature for the sake of the plot starting up. My overall opinion is that this is a fun little story for the Harry Potter world, but I don't like to think of it as canon when the original Harry Potter series was so good at keeping plot holes and character inconsistencies to a bare minimum. And, well, that's really it for the spoiler-free zone. I'm going to be talking about specific details from this point on, so I'll see some of you later. Now, let's get into the specific points of the video, starting with the good and then moving towards the bad. Harry's character is great in this. He seems to be unable to shake himself from his past, always associating things with Voldemort. He's overprotective of his children so they don't have to go through what he did, and he keeps accidentally talking about his intense adventures when he's trying to help them. Harry makes huge mistakes, and even becomes irascible and flies off the handle with people he cares about. This creates a lot of wonderful tension in the story, and it feels exactly like something Harry would do when he's pushed to the limit. Albus defies everything Harry is about, and is seemingly proud of it. He also eventually finds that he has more in common with Harry than he originally thought, too. This is some really good character development, and I really enjoy that Harry and Draco's relationship only peaks at working together, and not becoming true friends. It feels like a lot of outside writers might have made them besties, but that just doesn't fit the character. I'm glad most people don't change into something too different, and that Harry isn't held on a pedestal. I like that this story shows the right amount of fear and paranoia about the now-dead Voldemort. Wild rumors start appearing, and people start believing things like Scorpius is Voldemort's son by use of a time turner. Wild rumors starting like this seem very real to me, and it adds a nice layer of depth to the story. I don't like that it turned out to be kind of true, but I'll go a bit more into that later. I really like the blanket being used as a message across time, being used to unravel the plans of Delphi. It was clever, set up well, and it felt like one of the ways that Rowling would bring a climax to one of her earlier Harry Potter books. It was reminiscent of them without stealing any direct events, which is what a good sequel is about. Also, the bit where they get the time turner out of the bookshelf or whatever it was just the same. I personally thought it was a good touch to keep the scenes in Hogwarts as minimal as they were. Sure, they were there a fair amount, but almost no time was spent in class or studying or even being inside the castle. After spending 6 to 7 books there, I feel like everything about Hogwarts has been pretty much wrapped up, so I'm glad the story wasn't confined there. Like I said before, the dialogue is obviously not written by Rowling. In general, it's very good writing, but there are way too many points that are just too cheesy. Hermione revealing her job to the audience was, "Just take it as a little nudge from the Minister for Magic." Common phrases like, "Oh thank God," are changed to, "Oh thank Dumbledore," or "Oh shoot" is changed to "Oh Potter" in the reality where Harry dies and is hated by the world. It's just unrealistic speech and used only to pander. Revealing the reality where the world is run by Voldemort is with the line, "You're entirely ruining Voldemort Day." It's just the goofiest thing. I get that in a play there's no narrator to give you exposition, but these expositional points or pandering phrases just make the speech and the story feel way too corny. If you're seeing the negative reviews of this story, the word fanfiction will probably be mentioned a lot. This isn't technically fanfiction because Rowling gave her blessing that it would be canon, but it suffers from a lot of the same trappings as other fanfictions. A common problem in fanfiction is that the writer needs to escalate the story, but they don't spend creative effort making new and interesting situations, items, or plot points. Instead, they take old ones and make super versions of them. In The Cursed Child, this exact thing happens with the Time Turner. Twice even. Fanfiction often is developed to give the audience exactly what they want to see, regardless of if it makes the story better. I'm sure many people would have wanted to see a version of the story where the main character is put in Slytherin against his will. Or they want to see how Snape would react to Harry naming his son after him. Or experience what it would be like if Voldemort had won. Or even have a scenario where a Potter and a Malfoy are best friends. This also brings back characters that have no place in the plot just to remind viewers or readers that they were once in the series. These points in the story weren't just to make the story better, they were to give fans what they wanted, often at the story's expense. This book spends way too much time lingering on past events of Harry Potter, like the Triwizard Tournament, Cedric dying, Harry mentioning their past adventures left, right, and center, going back to the night when Harry's parents died, etc., etc., etc. This story doesn't use its own interesting scenes and settings, but piggybacks off the ones beforehand, rather than being its own standalone story. Sure, the story is different from them, but it's difficult to have a plot that feels like it's moving forward when the story's stuck in the past. Without continuously mentioning the past, the story would just be about a witch who wants to resurrect Voldemort but gets defeated. Sure, there's a lot more to the story than that, but that's the only fresh and new plot point that the story has given us. It doesn't feel like its own epic tale, it feels like a recap of the books with a bonus conclusion. Voldemort having a baby with Bellatrix is hard for me to believe. Either it was an accident or he wanted to have an heir, and neither seems likely to me. One, if it was an accident, then that's very poor planning on the part of a wizard who was able to make plans well enough to conquer the world. I don't think he'd want his best soldier out of commission for 9 months of pregnancy. Otherwise, he just wanted an heir, which also felt unlikely. He doesn't love and thus he would have no compassion for a child, obviously, and he thought himself immortal, so he didn't need someone to carry his legacy. So the only use would be as a right-hand man kind of thing, but I think Voldemort would be incredibly skeptical of someone being born with as much power as him. He wouldn't want the foreseeable competition. So by the time this videos come out, I will have made the first part to my Time Turner video, so I recommend you go watch that real quick if you haven't. The annotation is here. In this video, I explain why the Time Turner doesn't create a paradox in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. However, in this book, the story actually uses a different type of time travel than the one that's already established. This is done to make the story even function, so it's not great that it relies on changing rules to make it work. As I established in my first video, the Time Turner uses a predetermined timeline. Both the original person and the person from the future exist on the same plane at the same time. When going back to the past, nothing can be altered because the person traveling to the past existed at that point all along. The problem is that in The Cursed Child, Albus and Scorpius can alter the past. They disarm Cedric in the first task and turn him into a balloon in the second. These two events cause a drastic change in the future when they return. This doesn't necessarily have to be a paradox. What could be happening was it was a split timeline or multiverse theory, in which one timeline branches from itself into a new reality, but the original timeline still exists. The problem here, though, is that this is not a split timeline. It is a single altered timeline, which is inherently paradoxical. Albus goes back to the past and causes a chain of events that makes Harry die. Because Harry dies, he couldn't play the key part in creating Albus. However, if Albus was unborn, then who went back in time to humiliate Diggory in a way that caused Harry to eventually die? This is the grandfather paradox almost perfectly exemplified, and it is a grade A paradox. If Albus had still existed when he and Scorpius went to the new timeline, I could have called it the multiverse theory and that would have been just fine. Oh well. Okay, so that's mostly all I have to say about this book. I really could go on nitpicking so much more, but those are the main problems that I had with it. Because the negative in this case is fairly substantial, I honestly don't want to call this book canon. It makes me feel too sad. Seeing this story made me realize that the plots, characters, and dialogue, events, etc. were all closely monitored and never really got out of line during the entire series. Removing these flaws are what made the world feel real, and because the flaws are in this book, it doesn't feel like the real world of Harry Potter. As a standalone side story, I find this very enjoyable, and I don't want to bring it down from that level by trying to tack it onto a series that it would be almost impossible to stay on par with. So, do you agree? Do you disagree? I imagine I'm going to get some strong opinions down in the comments, so feel free to duke it out. With your words, I'll try to join in on any conversations that might be there, and I'll try to add my 2 cents. I'll be making more videos soon, and if you like my reviews, I feel like I'm pretty certain to do another one of the Fantastic Beasts movie coming out soon. And of course, thanks for watching. Nox.